The day I found out my mother-in-law sold my jewelry, I was standing in our bedroom, holding an empty velvet box, trying to convince myself I was mistaken. I remember my heart beating slowly at first, like it hadn't caught up with the shock yet, and I kept opening and closing the drawer as if the pieces might magically reappear. That jewelry wasn't just expensive, it was personal. Each piece carried a memory, a moment from my life that I trusted would stay safe in my own home. I had married my husband, Adam, 5 years earlier, and from the outside, our life looked stable. We lived in a quiet suburb, both worked steady jobs, and hosted family dinners almost every weekend. His mother, Linda, was always there. Too present, some people might say, but I told myself she was just a concerned, loving mother. She had a key to our house for emergencies, and at the time that didn't seem strange. I grew up believing family meant trust, even when it felt uncomfortable. The jewelry came from different chapters of my life. A gold bracelet my late grandmother gave me when I turned 18, a diamond pendant I bought myself after my first big promotion, a pair of antique earrings passed down from my own mother, who told me, "Keep these safe. One day you'll give them to your daughter." I rarely wore them all at once, but I kept them carefully stored, wrapped in soft cloth, tucked into a drawer I assumed no one would touch. Linda had always commented on them. Whenever she visited, her eyes lingered a little too long when I opened that drawer. She'd say things like, "You're lucky to have such fine taste," or "Real gold like this only goes up in value." I laughed it off, thinking she was just making conversation. Looking back, those comments feel heavier now, like warnings I didn't understand at the time. The first real sign that something was wrong came when Adam mentioned, casually over dinner, that his mother was tight on money again. He said it with a sigh, the way someone talks about a problem they've accepted as normal. I asked what he meant, and he shrugged, saying she'd made some bad investments and was stressed. I felt sympathy, not suspicion. I even suggested we help her if she needed it, and Adam smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're too kind." A few days later, Linda stopped by while I was at work. Adam told me she needed to rest for a bit and used our spare room. I didn't think twice. She was family. That night, she hugged me tightly before leaving and said, "Thank you for always being so understanding." Her voice sounded strange, almost emotional, but I brushed it aside. It wasn't until the following weekend, when I wanted to wear my grandmother's bracelet to a friend's dinner, that I noticed the drawer felt lighter. At first, I thought I'd moved the pieces and forgotten. I searched the closet, the bathroom, even the safe where we kept documents. My chest tightened with each passing minute. When I finally asked Adam if he'd moved my jewelry, he looked genuinely confused and said no. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying small moments, Linda's lingering looks, her sudden visit, her tight hug. By morning, a cold realization settled in my stomach. Someone I trusted had crossed a line, and deep down, I already knew who it was. I just didn't yet understand how far she'd gone, or what I would need to do next. I confronted Adam first. Sitting across from him at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cold mug of coffee I hadn't touched. I told him calmly that my jewelry was missing and that I believed his mother knew something about it. His reaction was immediate and defensive. He frowned, shook his head, and said, "You're imagining things. My mom would never do that." Hearing him say that hurt more than I expected, because it told me exactly where I stood in that moment. Over the next 2 days, I tried calling Linda. She didn't answer. When she finally did, her voice was overly cheerful, almost forced. I asked her directly if she'd seen my jewelry. There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach drop, before she laughed and said, "Oh, sweetheart, you must have misplaced it. You young people are always so busy." The call ended shortly after, and I sat there staring at my phone, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. The truth came out accidentally. A coworker of mine mentioned she'd seen a woman who looked just like Linda at a high-end pawn shop across town. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. Then she added, she was selling a lot of gold. The clerk said it was worth around $50,000. My ears started ringing, and I felt like the floor shifted under my feet. That evening, I drove past the pawn shop. In the window, displayed under bright lights, I saw my grandmother's bracelet. I knew it instantly, the small engraving on the inside catching the light just enough for me to see it. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit in the car for a few minutes before I could even breathe properly. The betrayal hit me all at once. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I went home and opened a folder I'd kept for years, one I'd almost forgotten about. Inside were receipts, appraisals, insurance documents, and photographs of every single piece of jewelry I owned. I'd kept them after a minor scare years ago when a friend's house was robbed. At the time, it felt overly cautious. Now, it felt like fate. When I showed Adam the evidence, his face changed. The denial faded, replaced by shock, then anger. He called his mother that night, demanding answers. I listened from the hallway as she finally admitted it, her voice cracking as she said she only borrowed them and planned to buy them back later. $50,000 gone, sold to cover her debts, as if my memories were just numbers on a receipt. I cried that night. Not just because of the jewelry, but because of the trust that was broken. I felt small and foolish for believing love meant people wouldn't hurt you. Somewhere between the tears and the silence, something inside me hardened. I realized that if I didn't stand up for myself now, I never would. I wasn't looking for revenge fueled by rage. I wanted justice, and I wanted my voice back. By the end of the week, I had a plan. Quiet, legal, and undeniable. Linda thought she could talk her way out of this, that family loyalty would protect her. She had no idea I was already preparing to prove exactly what she'd done, and that this time I wouldn't stay quiet to keep the peace. I met with a lawyer the following Monday, bringing the folder of receipts, photos, and appraisals with me. As I laid everything out on the table, I felt strangely calm. For the first time since discovering the theft, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was taking control. The lawyer confirmed what I already suspected. With clear proof of ownership and documentation of the sale, I had a strong case. We didn't rush. Instead, we sent a formal letter to Linda, requesting the return of the full amount within a set time frame. Her response was panic, disguised as anger. She called Adam repeatedly, accusing me of tearing the family apart and saying I was overreacting. When that didn't work, she showed up at our house unannounced, crying and apologizing, promising she'd make it right someday. I listened quietly, then told her the matter was now in legal hands. The confrontation happened in mediation, not in a dramatic shouting match, but in a small, quiet office that made everything feel heavier. When the mediator laid out the evidence, Linda's confidence disappeared. She went pale, her hands trembling as she realized there was no denying what she'd done. The receipts spoke for me, the appraisals confirmed the value, the pawn shop records tied everything together. In the end, she was ordered to repay the full $50,000. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't easy for her, but that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. Adam stood by me through the process, and while our relationship was strained for a while, it also changed. Boundaries were drawn, clearly and firmly, and his mother no longer had access to our home or our lives the way she once did. When the money finally came through, I didn't feel joy. I felt relief. I used part of it to recover what I could, buying back my grandmother's bracelet and one other piece before they disappeared for good. The rest went into a separate account, one that represented something more than money. It represented self-respect. Looking back now, I understand that the real loss wasn't the jewelry. It was the illusion that family automatically means safety. I learned that love doesn't excuse betrayal, and silence doesn't keep the peace. Standing up for myself didn't make me cruel. It made me whole. And every time I fasten that bracelet around my wrist, I remember that I protected not just my belongings, but my own worth.